Conquest of Dread is a YouTube channel that's been active for 3 months now. In that short amount of time, it's produced several fantastic videos on a range of topics as diverse as fascism and death metal, the commodification of the Polynesian body in Hollywood, and how conservative figures prey on people's internal biases. Tim, kia ora, bro.
Hey, how's it going?
Now you gotta tell me, how was that? Was that like a half decent?
No, it's all right. Yeah. Like, I mean, most people are like, kia ora, I think the thing is most people like overpronounce it.
Right.
It's the same with anything in like a language that people don't speak. They like overpronounce the shit out of it. Yeah. Like, what are they saying to me? I'm
terrified of saying like the car brand.
Oh yeah,
and that stops being like a fun hello.
Yeah, totally.
So mate, before I ask you anything else, I just need to know, how the hell did you get so good at special effects?
People keep asking me that, and I don't really like I look at my own stuff and I just see like, oh, I should have, like, the tweening's a little bit off on that, or I should have done this, or whatever, blah blah blah. So I'm not like, I don't know if I would class myself as being particularly good at that kind of stuff. But I have a background in visual arts. I'm a tattooist day to day, and I've done like graphic design. I was like a freelance photographer for a little while. So I've kind of always done stuff where it's like, like creative visually and kind of focused on like layouts and all that kind of stuff. So, I feel like making these videos has kind of just been a combination, it's really just like an amalgamation of all these different skills that I've learned over my life, and kind of, figuring it out.
It's a natural extension of what you've been doing so far.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd never done anything like this before I did my first video. So I was like, kind of like, I didn't know what it was supposed to, like, I didn't know what it entailed. I didn't really know what I wanted it to look like or anything. And I didn't really have any kind of like watermark for like, like this is what I have to do. It's just kind of like, I'm just gonna fuck around with this, and if it like I want it to look cool, and when I think like, yeah, that's cool, then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do the next one.
Yeah, that's I think that's a good way to do it. I want to try and make one of those little audio how you get those audio waves to jump up with your voice and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I want to do that for this podcast, actually, make it a little more interesting. It's great.
I get a lot of feedback from other content creators about that. They're like, that's so sick. But it's like, it was like one of the last like little things that I started doing, because I kind of just got to the end of doing my first video, and there were these sections where it was just like, kind of like, you know how you have like dead air when you're on the radio or talking to someone or whatever, but then there's like also just kind of dead, I don't know, like a dead screen time. I don't know what you'd call it, where it's just like, and I mean, that's fine. Like, I mean, there's like a lot of videos that I watch, content creators like Sean and stuff who do that, where it's just a static image. And I tend to kind of just, like I'll listen to those videos on headphones or whatever, and, like tab over to it if there's like, I know he's trying to show us something. But for the most time, I don't really think of those as like a visual kind of thing, whereas I wanted to make videos that were a visual thing. So I was like, okay, I don't want people to be tabbing away from them, but I don't want to fill this time with something that is too overwhelming. Like, there does have to be like a kind of like a rest for your eyes, but I don't want it just to be like, I don't want it to be too boring.
Yeah, and you don't want to stick on the same image you've already been on for a minute or so.
Even though it basically is the same image with the wiggly line, and it just has like a camera that kind of moves around. So it's like, it's a pretty cheap trick, but but for some reason people love the wiggly lines.
It's like a baby watching the mobile in a crib. I can't get enough of it.
You just like add like a little bit of depth of field to anything, and people are just like, oh my god, it's so real.
Then it becomes vaporwave, and it's awesome. So you're talking a bit about starting this first video and everything, and that's great, because I was really wanting to know what inspired you to start the channel. Like what made you kick it off?
Well, I had been watching a lot of video content about all different kinds of things, and I like that first one, the one about the rise of fascism in extreme music, like black metal and stuff. Because I grew up listening to a lot of like black metal and kind of like quite kind of outside of music or whatever, and there's always been that element to it, like like there's always kind of been these like shitty far right elements, and so I was looking at YouTube thinking like, surely someone has said something about this, like, but so I was looking through it, and like all the videos I could find were either like just guys being like, yeah, this sucks, but like it doesn't really matter. Like you can still buy if you like the music, just buy the records. You know, you don't have to support them. And then I'm kind of like, but if you're buying the records,
you're supporting them. Yeah.
You know, and they're like, or like people saying like, okay, well, most of the money just goes to the label anyway. It doesn't go to the bands. It's like, yeah, and then the labels like take that, you know, like then they take that money and they put out more fascist bands. And, you know, and there was actually one thing, like two of the biggest things, I would say the two influences that made me personally be like, okay, so I should say something, I should do something, is like, I guess, I mean, like I knew what skills I had, but then I was seeing two in particular. One was PragerU and their videos, and seeing them and being like, this is shit, like this looks so terrible. And I was like, I knew that if I made a video I could make it better than that, you know, like, and it's like, okay, this is like, you know, like this is a compelling argument enough, you know, like the stuff that the right do looks like shit. We can make something that's cooler than that, but actually have some kind of like content to it, you know, like it can like be based on real shit, it can whatever. But and then the other one was, there's a group, I think they're based in the Ukraine at the moment, and they are a record label, a distro, they put out all kinds of stuff, they hold events, and they're a extreme far right, you know, neo-Nazi kind of group. I'm not going to name them or anything like that because I don't want people to go look them up, but they recently kind of just like they kicked off and they rebranded all their stuff a couple years back, and it's all like really slick, like they've got graphic designers and artists, and like they have like websites and videos where it's all like, if you're just some dude that didn't know better, you'd see their videos and you'd be like, man, like this is cool, like these videos look cool, it's a really cool aesthetic, it's like kind of it's on trend as well, like visually, you know, and like they have like a store that they go to, you can buy records there, and they have like books you can check out and all this kind of stuff like that, and they're like fostering this little community. But if you were to watch the videos, you'd be like there's nothing that controversial there. So I was like thinking about the way that they can use aesthetics and use optics to kind of I guess just like, yeah, I mean, basically just to trick people, you know, like, and that's something that I've been exploring, especially in my last video, about the way that people can be really fooled quite easily by like unconscious biases and just like the projection of an image, you know.
And I mean, that was the most interesting thing about your first video to me, was that some of these early bands who were so influential had these fascist leanings and they were using fascist iconography, and that's kind of just filtered down through the years to the point that bands who aren't necessarily hard right sometimes still use the same images.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a huge thing. And there's it's kind of like, if you criticize some of those early bands, it's almost taken as like a criticism of the entire genre or like the art form, you know. And it's kind of like like, I mean, I had a good comment. Someone commented on the YouTube video just the other day, but I replied to it and then they deleted it. So it's like, which has happened actually quite a lot. Like that first video about fascism and extreme metal still gets the most views, the most comments out of everything that I've put out. And it's the only one where I've got really people that are trying to be like, because I mean, there's like this huge thing about elitism in metal. So these guys are like trying to be like trying to out metal me or something like that. And you can see like some of them are still in the comments and stuff, and they'll like say something or whatever, and I'll just like reply to them, and then they end up just being like, oh, okay, well, good work, you know. It's just like, dude, like you want to come at me with this, like. But
like they got noticed by senpai and they're freaking out.
Yeah. There's another guy who he runs like a YouTube channel, and he's like a real fucking jerk, and he commented on it. It was one of the first comments, and he said something about like he had misspelled his comment, and he was like, oh, policing people is just going to push people further to the left. Good job. Like, I think he meant to say, like, push further to the right. I just replied, like, that sounds good, actually. It's like, deleted. But,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. But I can't even remember what the question was now.
At this point, who knows?
Yeah.
I actually, one of the things that was so interesting about that, I ended up taking some notes because when I was watching this. And so you were saying that Bolt Thrower's Fourth Crusade album has, you know, some sort of possible Nazi iconography on it. Like it uses the Iron Cross, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
so yeah. Oh yeah. So that's the thing. Like so there are things that are associated with like metal that people associate with Nazism, but aren't necessarily Nazi specific. Like like the Iron Cross is a big one. Like you see like, you know, all kinds of heavy metal dudes going back, and like this is back from before heavy metal. Like lots of bikers would use that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so to like a lot of people that don't know the kind of trappings of heavy metal, they might see something like that and they'd be like, okay, these guys are Nazis or whatever.
Yeah.
But then to you know, the average metal fan, like the Iron Cross is like nothing. And I mean, like in an ideal world, they probably wouldn't, you know, like I wouldn't recommend anyone go out and put that shit, whatever. But like, you know, like a lot of these albums are old now, you know, it's like no one's going to go back and edit their old album.
Right,
you know?
right.
But so like, it's kind of like, yeah, like that Fourth Crusade, it's like, it's a painting of like the sacking of Constantinople, and it's like, you know, so like it fits the kind of aesthetics of this modern kind of like, you know, like how the alt-right have kind of co-opted this whole like crusades kind of imagery, you know. It's like it looks like something that they would use, you know, and it's got everything there, but like Bolt Thrower are just a band that write songs about war, and it's always been about war. And like they're equally likely to write an album about the Crusades as they are about like Warhammer 40k or something like that, you know, like, and it's just like to them they're just like, yeah, war is metal, you know, like, and they've actually spoken out, like in the past they've spoken out about you know, like against fascism and all that kind of stuff, whereas there are other bands like you get guys like an example is a band called Marduk, who they're, you know, they're constantly getting accused of, you know, Nazism and stuff because they do, like, you know, they have written songs named after Nazi shit, albums after Nazi shit. They even like one of them got caught like there was like some far right distro company that was like a legitimately racist company, and they got shut down, and on their files there was I think it was a member of Marduk had bought like a shitload of stuff from them, but it wasn't just like, oh, you know, like books or whatever. It was like flyers and pamphlets for distribution and stuff like that. Right. So when people go, oh man, like these guys are Nazis, and people go, no, they're just like history. They're like war. It's like no, Bolt Thrower like war. Like if you're caught distributing this kind of stuff, like it's different, you know. Like
they're not history enthusiasts like passing out textbooks.
Like I think there are people out there that are like just war, you know, like fans of that kind of stuff, and they might even like collect things that are like, you know, German shit from that time, but they understand that this is like, you know, it's not like if you're gonna like start putting Nazi shit on your albums and shit like that, like you should be aware that this is bad and this represents bad things, you know. But it's like I think they kind of they trade on the ambiguity of it, where they if they come out and deny that they're shitty or whatever like that, then that alienates the far right people, but it also is seen as like kind of caving in or, you know, whatever. Whereas like historically metal is like, there's this saying, they're like black metal should be dangerous or whatever. But so to, it's like, oh, we're being controversial because this music is supposed to be offensive. But if we were to change or we to renounce these things, it would be kind of like caving to this new generation who believe that we shouldn't be offensive or whatever. But then it's like, these people are the same guys that are like, they're like, no safe spaces, but we should also be allowed to be Nazis and no one should be able to criticize us for that. So it's like, sounds like a safe space.
It really does. It's that plausible deniability that
exactly.
they really want. And it's like, people who know, people who they're winking to understand.
Exactly, It's the same as like the far right in any other area,
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know that. I didn't know much about the metal scene before this, and it did just make me think a lot about the video game scene and Gamergate, and I think you actually did say, talking about white supremacists preying on outsiders.
Yeah.
And it did really just remind me of when Gamergate was popping off, and these people who first were just like, I care about IGN giving something a 9 out of 10.
Ethics in video game journalism.
Yeah, and now half of them are just like, oh, we need a safe space for white children. You're like, the fuck did that happen?
One really terrible one was just recently I saw there's a game called Maud House, I think it's called. It's like a medieval combat kind of one or whatever. And so they just announced that they were gonna give, like, because it's a new game, everyone in it is just a white knight, kind of like a white dude in a suit of armor or whatever, but they just announced that they're going to be adding in different genders and skin colors and stuff, and but they've said that they're going to give people a little option to tick, so you can actually opt out of seeing people that aren't white men. It's like,
my god,
what the fuck is this? It's so ridiculous because it's like, it's a developers caving to these, like, these people or whatever, but also it's kind of like them saying, like, it's not on us, it's on you guys, like we've given you the control or whatever, and it's like, maybe you just shouldn't.
Yeah. I towards the end of this video, one of my favorite parts was you mentioned all these lefty bands, like and from that I started listening to Gloss, or GLOSS, how they say it, and those guys fucking rule.
Yeah, they're a really, really good band, and they kind of came in, did their shit, and then they just wrapped it up, and I think that's awesome because it's like there's so much energy and there's so much cool shit going on there that it's kind of like, you don't want to like I mean, they wrapped it up when they got offered a pretty big record contract, and they were kind of like, that's not what we're about or whatever, which is it's cool that they kind of kept it real or whatever. Yeah. But I feel like if they had have stuck around, maybe, I mean, I don't know, they might have made 20 amazing albums or whatever. Yeah, right. But I kind of feel like it was just like so rad to see this band just like come out of nowhere, just smash it, and then just be like, okay, we did what we want to do. Yeah. We're going to step away from it, instead of like kind of sacrificing, their artistic.
Yeah, and that's what, like, punk, something about punk to me has always been short. It's always been short songs, short albums, and like short band life kind of fits in with that. I
mean, no one wants to end up like, I don't know, like, there's so many bands that have just just become really terrible over the years. I mean, and it's even like the idea of like what's punk to you when you start may not be what's punk to you down the track or whatever, And I mean, just no one wants to end up like Johnny Rotten in a MAGA shirt or whatever,
Chills, man, just hearing that. So moving on to your next video, which was titled "Why Aquaman Sucks," but then in brackets, the commodification of the Polynesian body. I love that because you got that clickbait drawing him in, but then right away you warn, no, there's gonna be some real discussion here.
Actually, a good segue into that is we were just talking about video games, and I just saw earlier today this developer has just put out like some promotional materials for their new game, and it's like it's this game they're putting out called Greedfall, a company called Spiders, and I just hit them up on Twitter. I'm like, I seriously want to have a discussion with you guys because they just put out this it's this RPG they're developing, and it's like it's literally like a colonial RPG. Like you're set as like a colonial era explorer going to this new fantasy island and doing colonial era shit. But the pictures of the dudes and the guys like got like this approximation of, you know, like facial tattoos that are like supposed to be Maori. And it's like, oh, like you can tell that that's what they're going for. But they're like, you know, anyone that actually knows what that shit really looks like, we look at it and we're like, okay, no, this is like obviously not like, no, there were no Maori in the boardroom when this is going on, like no one on the art design team or anything like that. Like I hit them up because I was like you can't be using this inside your colonial narrative, you know, like this is not cool.
Do you know what you're saying with that?
Well, it's just wild, and it's like, man, you're just like taking something because you're like, oh, this looks cool, and then of all the narratives that you could assign it to,
they found the worst. Oh, they stumbled on the worst one.
But I mean, and that's kind of like what I felt about the Aquaman movie as well, because it's like they've taken the very superficial kind of like surface level aesthetics of like I guess like Pacific and culture in general, because they've like picked little bits here and there and kind of like slapped it on top of a superhero without really kind of showing how without adding any depth to it and showing like, okay, well, maybe if a character did come from, you know, like if he actually was from the Pacific, or like even like if he didn't grow up there, like, you know, like he grows up in like Maine or something like that. His father is like kind of like, you know, there to guide him and stuff. Like he would have a very different worldview, and he would probably have a very different like there would be a very different outcome to that story, I feel. And I feel like of all of the superheroes, like there are so many good opportunities to make Aquaman a really good indigenous hero that is fighting like a bad, like, you know, like just like a really good, like he was like this kind of environmentalist superhero.
Yeah, I was so glad your video touched on that, because that's my because I'm a pretty big comic book guy from way back when, and that's always been my favorite type of Aquaman, is the like environmentalist, you're fucking up the ocean, stop guy.
And it's so relevant, especially to like, I mean, like the conversations that, you know, like I guess like the mainstream media are having at the moment and all this kind of stuff, you know, like even like I'm surprised they barely touched on like, you know, global warming and all that kind of stuff. I think that maybe King Orm like mentioned it really briefly in his little speech about like actually humans are the bad guys sort of thing. And I was like, I know, I was so disappointed. Like that could have been the moment. He could have like shown me, could have been like, bro, this is what's up. Like, this like, you know, they're destroying the ocean, they're destroying the world or whatever like that. And then, you know, he could have, like, I don't know, that, you know, he could have had his moment and be like, oh, actually, you know, like maybe there's a middle ground we can come to here, you know, like, because I mean, like King Orm, like, yeah, he is like, I guess he's like an eco-fascist. So, you know, like that's kind of shit. But it's, I feel like there would have been a much more compelling narrative, and there is like, there's a cool story to tell there, and it didn't get told. It just kind of got reduced to like a below average superhero movie, like which sucks, because I mean the director James Wan, he's done like decent stuff before or whatever, and I really feel like they were trying to make a Marvel movie, because it's a DC film, but aesthetically it looks more like Marvel movies, and then Marvel have like. And they have Taika Waititi, who is like an actually amazing Maori director, who like I'm sure is contractually never allowed to go anywhere near DC. But I can imagine like if he had made that movie, like, you know, considering the kind of the messages that he put into Thor Ragnarok, I feel like that would have been a cool Aquaman, you know?
Oh, hell yeah, yeah. And like, you know, I know Taika Waititi wrote, so apparently he wrote the first draft of Moana and then like moved on. But apparently that's when, you know, Disney took that and they were like, oh shit, this is what it's going to be about. This is the feel.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from him and he said that they threw out like 90% of what he wrote.
I would kill for that script, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool.
I bet it's amazing.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, like at the end of the day, I still feel like, okay, these movies are, they aren't like, they're, I mean, it's like, it's entertainment under capitalism, you know? It's like they're made to make a product for everyone. They're not, you know, like, they weren't like, okay, how are we going to make a movie that fucking Maoris are going to love? You know, it's like, you know, it's not gonna happen. And yeah, I don't know, like the thing, like when I made that video, I wasn't like, these are my demands, you know? It was just like when I'm making these movies, I'm trying to be more like, imagine what could happen, you know? Like I actually saw an interview with what's his name, Ollie from Philosophy Tube, who talked about that, where he's like, instead of making a video that you're like telling someone this is what we should do or whatever, it's kind of like, maybe you could just like knock on a little door in their head so that they can like kind of explore some other ideas maybe. So that's kind of like the way that I think of it, where I'm like, I'm not telling anyone that they should, you know, like their movie was bad or like their music sucks or whatever like that. But I'm trying to say like, there's other things we can do and there's other ways you can think about this. You know? Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things you looked at when talking about new age stereotypes and sort of in talk, you talked about the TV show Brotown. And I have the vaguest memories of that show from like high school, and all of my like broiest, dumbest friends thought it was hilarious. I imagine they weren't like laughing for like the same reasons that a Maori crowd would when looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's a lot of shitty stuff in those shows, but there's also like I think it was also really empowering for people to see that show on TV, because they're like, okay, this cast is like, they're all like, you know, like people from different backgrounds in New Zealand that we know, like, you know, like they're based on cultures, like, yeah, you know, because it's like all different cultures, well, a lot of different cultures represented in there, but it could have been really amazing, but it kind of like there is good stuff in there, like there's some really, really kind of good like jokes that hold up really well to this day, but then there's just some really terrible stuff that's kind of like just punching down from, it's like you're not even on the top and you're punching down to the people that are like even lower down than you are, like that's kind of shitty. And like I mean, like it's like it's a little bit too much to expect, because it was like, it's a few years ago now, and like that cartoon never would have been made the same way these days, which is good. Like, you know, if people were to do it these days, especially in New Zealand, we're a lot more kind of like, you know, like open to, I guess, more progressive narratives. But yeah, like there's some stuff in that show that is just like, so there's this idea that if you come from one group and you are like having a laugh at your own expense, then it's always fine. And I mean, it's like, I understand why that happens, and I understand why comedians, you know, like kind of take the piss out of themselves or whatever. And New Zealand humor is super self-deprecating as well. Right. But you kind of like, when you have a really big platform like that, especially if you are kind of, I guess, like becoming more successful or whatever, you have to be aware of how, like, what you're saying about the people like around you that are, you know, maybe still stuck in those neighborhoods with the, you know, like, you know, the shitty stuff going on and being perpetrated, you know, like, yeah, like, which I think is something that, you know, like a lot of people kind of criticize people like, oh no, you're famous now, you're too Hollywood or whatever like that. But then you get guys like Taika is a good example of that. Like, he's gone on and he's doing these like massive Marvel movies, but he's still keeping it like super real, and he's still like kind of like incorporating like indigenous narratives, anti-colonial narratives. Like he even like when he was filming Thor Ragnarok, they had like a drop-in shelter for indigenous activists there. Like that's like so sick, you know, like. But and
I know when it's because a lot of the Ragnarok filmed in Australia, he was part of this he mandated that a certain percentage of the crew be indigenous. Which
there was
huge, you know.
It was like they wouldn't hire someone if they could, like if there was an indigenous person that could do that job, they would hire them over the other person. So it was only if they couldn't find an indigenous person to fill that job, then they'd, you know, like have an open call for it. But it's like stuff like that's cool because you know, he's still like I mean, he's using his position to not just like push like genuine indigenous narratives, but also to kind of like, you know, like I guess pull up the other people, because you know it's like you can get to that point and be like, this is sick, like I've made it,
right?
You know, like, I'm good, or like I've got my seat at the table, because there's like that's like a lot of people overlook it, but like indigenous capitalism is a thing, like it's a very big thing, especially in New Zealand. There's actually a podcast, a New Zealand podcast called the Shit Hot People's Politburo.
That's the best title I've ever heard.
They're actually like, they're amazing. They're all like hilarious, fucking really good. But they have an episode on Maori capitalism, and it fucking rules, because it's kind of the kind of shit that like people are kind of scared to say. Like they, you know, they kind of like as if like, you know, you just see like you know, like a Maori person in Parliament, you're like, okay, cool, they represent me. It's like, well, maybe they don't, you know, like, yeah. So, and it's the same thing, and it's the exact same thing with media and stuff like that. Like, and so with Brotown, sorry, getting all the way back to that, it was that kind of thing where it's like, yeah, man, like there was like, you know, like all the main writers and stuff were all Pacific Islanders. It was like, you know, like a lot of the animators and stuff were too, and all that kind of stuff. But they're kind of like, they're perpetuating, I mean, these really shitty stereotypes about like, you know, like the perpetually drunk fathers, and like, you know, like these like Asians that are addicted to gambling, and like the, you know, like the Aboriginal Australian dude that never wears clothes and just eats worms all the time and shit like that. And it's just like, man, like it's like really kind of like just makes you kind of squirm a little bit. But like at the time I remember, like, you know, when I was in school and this was coming out, like so many of my friends were like fucking cracking up at it. And I mean, I was too, like when I was really young, I was like thinking like, yeah, this is awesome, because you know, like it's like I know what they're talking about when they make these jokes. And then like later on, you kind of like when you're a little bit older or whatever, you think about it and you're like, oh man, like these ideas are actually harmful, like because even though like some of these things are like obviously like based on like, you know, like a stereotype that already exists, and it's probably, it would have existed without, you know, without Brotown or without like whatever, but like still you could have used that platform to subvert those kind of shitty narratives and kind of like show another side of things. And there are moments in the show where they do kind of like break through to that kind of stuff, but I feel like it's kind of like, it's like not enough for me to be like, to think that it was maybe like not enough to think that it was really intentional, you know?
Yeah, right. More like they stumbled on it sometimes. So moving on to the next one you put out, which was the Is Life Pay to Win video. And that was the first one of yours that I actually caught, and I was obsessed with it right away. And I've just got my notes here. The first question, how the fuck did you create this animation?
That's like just a combination of so many different tricks and things, and I just like, I wanted it to look like a just like a kind of shitty video game that didn't, like, it was like a nondescript video game, like something you could look at and you were just like, okay, I know that's what a video game looks like or whatever. So I don't know, I just like got a bunch of did a bunch of tutorials on YouTube, learned a bunch of stuff, like kind of
it's it's so good, man. It's one of my favorite things because it looks like a I don't know how to describe it, like almost like a South Park video game kind of thing, like that sort of just stop and start animation, and but just the central metaphor of what you're going for, of like privilege being a deluxe edition of the game and the game is life, is just that. I thought that was really good. That just cut through all of it, man. I
was thinking about it because I saw an article a while back that had used a similar metaphor, but they were talking about it as if it was like different difficulty settings, like easy, medium, hard, all that kind of stuff. But I think that like maybe that isn't the best description, because there's I think there's a little bit more to it than that, because it's almost like because like privilege is something that isn't like, it's not a universal thing. Like you don't just like have privilege and then your life is super easy or whatever like that. It's more like it gives you, like different kinds of privilege can give you different edges in different scenarios. So I think it's like a lot, like there's more to it than just being like, this person is going to have an easy life because of this. And I think that when you frame the discussion that way, it really turns a lot of people off, because they're like, it seems like they're saying like, oh, you're just discounting the hardships that I have faced. You're saying that I live on easy mode, where it's like, no, that's, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the thing, where it's like, okay, you still have like the same end goal to get to the end of the game. You're still trying to do that. You still have to
slay the dragon. That's what
you still got to get there, and you still might like, like die a couple times or whatever like that. But it's like there's less hurdles in the way for you, so I don't know if I like really like nailed the perfect metaphor, but I think that I think that I made a better case for it than the existing.
Absolutely, definitely. Like
honestly, like a week before, not even that, like a couple days before I put it out, another YouTuber, Thought Slime, put out a really good video where he uses similar metaphors as well, and I was like, I'm so close. But so I like commented like, I was about to put out this video. But Thought Slime does amazing videos as well, though. So,
really fucking brilliant. I do think the life on easy mode versus life on hard mode narrative, it is a bit, it's kind of harmful, because life unless you are at the absolute top, life is hard for everyone.
Well, I think it's like it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's almost kind of like reducing things a little bit too far. Like I did want to go. Like initially, I planned to have it so that that it was the two different characters were playing, and they both had like different buffs in certain areas, but I had to cut it down so it was a lot shorter, so I could say that like, okay, so like Johnny has privilege in these ways, but then you have this privilege in this way or whatever, but it just kind of started getting a little bit too much.
That sounds like a long production if you really
yeah. And I mean, like, just that animated portion of that video took, like, the majority of the time I was working on that video was just working on that first couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So I was, like, at a point I just had to call it and be like, this would be really cool, but it's probably not necessary to what I'm doing,
But, like, no, and the other thing about the video, like, actually, it made me think about, the ways in which, like, I'm a white dude from Australia. Like, I have it easy in a lot of ways. And, like, it made me think a bit about that. And one of the things I realized was, like, I've been driving for a bit over a decade, and I've never been pulled over once.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Like, just and like, just the sheer odds of that seem pretty fucking low.
Yeah.
And that's part of the, like, the bonus, that is the buff or whatever that I have. I'm that's just one of them, like, so I just thought phrasing it as this deluxe edition was just a perfect way to put it. But I also do like, again, like we're saying earlier about how gamers and the descent into like Gamergate and all right stuff. Yeah. So framing it this way is it's sort of an invitation
Yeah, I did want it, like, and I do want it in the future. Actually, in the video that I'm working on now, I'm kind of using a little bit kind of game metaphors and stuff as well. But I want to engage with that because it kind of is like, yeah, like video game content is so heavily dominated by just shitty reactionaries, you know? Like it's kind of like you can watch any video game video on YouTube and it'll be like you mentioned, I mean your recommended videos will get ruined, like
the worst. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you like all of a sudden, like, you know, like it'll go from something that's like pretty harmless or whatever, and then it's like, you know, just like some dude with like a little animal avatar and he's ranting about how like you know, like Mortal Kombat needs to make the girls have bigger boobs or it's white genocide.
Fucking incredible.
Like that. Like
so for my videos, whenever I like do stuff that involves you know, looking at a fascist channel, I have an alt account just for that, just so they don't screw up my recommendations.
Yeah.
But if you go into that alt account, it's just the worst fucking stuff.
I ruined my own when I did that first video, just because I was like searching for so much stuff, like, you know, like NSBM, you know, like National Socialist Blackmail, all this kind of stuff, and it just ruined all of my recommendations. And it's wild the kind of jumps that YouTube will make between content, you know? It's kind of like I don't know, like I'm not sure exactly how it kind of, you know, like how it all works or anything like that. But yeah, it's like 2 degrees of separation from like, you know, watching like a video game trailer or like, you know, just like some gameplay or whatever like that, to like legitimate, like full on, like, you know, like replacement theory, like
full blown like, shit.
Some like actual legitimate like dudes trying to like advocate for like, you know, like reduced rights for women and like all this kind of stuff like that. And it's just like how is this like, what's the connection there? I mean, it's like Gamergate is the connection, I guess.
It's just, I just wanted to watch like a Super Smash Brothers trailer and
yeah, exactly. And now I'm a Nazi.
Oh shit. And yeah, so swinging it to your very latest video, which I also really enjoyed, which you just titled "You Are Being Tricked."
Yeah.
And to me, it's sort of, I think it was all about like internal biases and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what I loved was, so you started out by asking the audience to like picture a successful person. And so I was like, okay, I'll play along, I'll do it. And like, I started picturing my own dad. And
no, that's it's a thing.
That right there is about as internal of a bias that you can have, you know? Because no one else in the world is, my dad's a very successful man, but still no one's going to picture him, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was like why I was trying to kind of point out that like everyone has their own idea of what this looks like, and it's unique to you, and you should become acquainted with it, because then you can start interrogating it, you know? I think it's something that is it is used a lot, like, I mean, unintentionally, you know, there's like that whole like kind of idea of like dressing for success, and if you look like this, people are going to take you really seriously. And I think that's just always going to be a thing. Like there's nothing we can do about that. But then I think that like there's these people like, you know, like there is actually I can't remember his name, but there's a really good article about the guy who first took on Ben Shapiro and actually kind of gave him a bit of a makeover and taught him all about, you know, like, you know, what he should do and all this kind of stuff. I can probably find the article real quick, but and it's super interesting about how this guy just kind of gave Ben Shapiro a makeover and kind of gave him a start as this little dude.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's called the article's "Let Me Make You Famous: How Hollywood Invented Ben Shapiro" by Tina Nguyen.
That sounds
It's from late last year, and it's really good. So this guy Jeremy Boring kind of created the brand of Ben Shapiro, and and like I think people overlook that because it's the same thing with Jordan Peterson. Like he is a father figure, you know. Like
that's what ContraPoints always calls him, daddy.
Daddy.
And it's like kind of ironic, but it's also what like a lot of young guys who watch his show are looking for.
And his rhetoric like leans into that very hard, you know.
Clean your room.
And I think it's like it's something that definitely gets exploited by people on the right, and you know, like even just like motivational speakers, you know, like guys like what's his name, Tony Robinson.
Robbins?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Tony Robbins. That's whatever his name is, that guy. You know, like it's like because that's the thing. It's like your image is part of your brand and your identity and how you're putting yourself out there. And people are kind of aspirational. You know, they're like, I want to look like I'm in charge, like that guy or whatever.
Yeah.
But and I don't think that people on the left are immune to it either. Like
No,
I definitely think
not.
that you know, there's people on the left that are you know, like guys like Ollie, who I mentioned earlier from Philosophy Tube. He has like it's probably because he's like a theater dude. He has a presence, and his presence, like, you know, he knows how to work an audience and stuff like that. So you pay attention, you know, you listen to what he's saying, and that's, I mean, it's good that, you know, we have people like that spread positive messages and stuff like that.
Right, as opposed to fucking Ben Shapiro.
yeah, exactly. But I feel like regardless of what side you're on, like I feel like that video could be just as helpful to someone who is like, you know, completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, to help them kind of interrogate their own shit and be like, oh, okay, well, you know, like, why do I pay attention to this guy? Why don't I pay attention to them or whatever like that? Like, yeah, I think it's something that is kind of like a non-partisan thing. Like you're learning to interrogate your own biases and stuff. Like, obviously it's like, I feel like, yeah, people on the right are kind of using it in a more deceptive way. But, yeah, I think it's like something that affects everyone. And, you know, it's not just like, you know, internet reactionaries. It's like local politicians and everything like that as well, you know, like, and yeah, just like, even just, you know, in the workplace, stuff like that. Like, if you have a meeting at work and there's one person that always gets asked their opinion regardless, you know, like a good example of this is I'm a tattooist, but when I was doing my apprenticeship, I worked with two women who were way more experienced than me, had been tattooing a lot longer, and I was just the apprentice, and we'd be sitting in the shop and people would come in and they'd address me directly.
Right,
and they'd ask me, they'd be like, hey, so blah, 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 you know, and like if one of the women would, you know, like speak to them or whatever, they'd be like, okay, so who's a tattooist? Like they'd point to me and be like, I want to talk to the tattooist. And it's like, you know, like these kind of things are, like people don't even realize that that's a thing that they're doing. They're not even conscious of that.
No, I've had a really similar thing because I've worked full time as a legal receptionist before, and so I'll pick up the phone, say, hello, this is the firm name, this is Michael talking, and occasionally I've had older clients just assume that I'm a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And so they'll just say like, okay, my son's done this, I need to sue him. And I'll be like, all right, I can put you through to someone. And that happened like once a fortnight. And one time I mentioned it to one of the other receptionists. Every other receptionist was female. None of them had ever had it happen once.
Yeah.
And it's like, first of all, why is a lawyer picking up the phone at reception? Come on. Think it through.
Just got nothing better to do.
Yeah, and you know, like they just hear my voice and they just assume, okay, dude knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I used to, years ago when I lived in Melbourne, I worked for an ISP, and from the minute I started there, I would get people like a woman that I worked with, and they would message me and they'd be like, hey, look, I've just told this guy, like, we can't do what he wants me to do, but he's not, you know, he's not taking me seriously, and there's no managers here to talk to him, so can you just tell him exactly what I just said, but just say it as a dude,
right?
You know, so I'd be like, okay, and this was like from my very first week of the job, you know, and I'd just be like, oh yeah, you know, like just say the exact same thing, and they'd be like, oh, okay, all right, cool, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, sweet, you know, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I think there's so many more things we could explore going down that pathway, and my next video kind of goes into that a little bit as well. I guess kind of continuing from there, like
awesome.
So in that last one, I'm kind of like talking about unconscious biases and how people use them to their own advantage and that kind of stuff. And then in the next one, I'm going to start looking at how they can be used against people. Like I'm doing, this is a little sneak peek.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
One of the chunks is going to be about the like pain bias, whereas like so there's a thing where feminine presenting people are taken less seriously for the pain they experience because they are perceived to be more hysterical than more masculine people. And it's kind of like based on, you know, there's like the idea of like gender and femininity and masculinity as being a binary system with a spectrum in between. And on one side you have feminine, dainty, cute, and then on the other side you have like tough and, you know, like butch and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, even if you are a woman that is like, you know, more masculine, you're always like, it's a very like, there's you know, like you're somewhere on that flat spectrum, you know. It's like, so a strong woman, which I did touch on at the end of the last video. A strong woman is often pictured as someone like Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, where she's a very, you know, like, you know, she's like kind of like square shoulders, short hair, stuff like that, where it's like, you know, like, why is it that that's only, you know, why is that binary spectrum only that such a simple, you know, like A to B sort of thing, whereas like in real life it's actually completely different, you know. But yeah, and this affects people in healthcare situations. Like there's like a shitload of women and like other like trans people, all kinds of people that are either misdiagnosed, undiagnosed for like chronic pain, all kinds of things, just because they're perceived as being more hysterical about their levels of pain. Whereas, and there's studies have shown that guys will get more likely to be referred on to like actual like medical, like physical tests, whereas like more feminine presenting people are kind of pushed more towards like psychiatric and psychological evaluations and things like that. So it's like just a way that these biases manifest into like what I would refer to as like systems of oppression that aren't, you know, like a lot of the time when people think about oppression, they're like, show me the law that oppresses. You know, like
they're looking for Jim Crow laws or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's not as simple as like slavery or redlining or anything like that. It's like, you know, like there's these things that can manifest just through other systems. And so the next video is kind of like a bunch of examples of stuff like that and how they kind of interlock, and it kind of works as like a funnel to kind of push people towards certain outcomes, you know? Like they all work to kind of funnel you down into being you know, like to the working poor category, you know? Which is, which is like basically like, you know, like I guess for capitalism to keep, you know, to grease the wheels, we need a large working poor. And that's kind of like where these systems, like that's where they want us to end up. Man, and it's like it's sometimes they don't even like, it's not even a matter of you know, like deliberate, you know, invention of like a capitalist entity or anything like that. It's just that the nature of these systems by themselves kind of necessitate these outcomes, you know?
Because things warp back to that, even if it's not the intention.
I mean, it's just like the underlying system is the problem. It's not like, you know, it's not on the top where we're like, you know, it's like not that whole thing like we need more female CEOs or like that.
Of course,
like, no, we need more, like we need less CEOs.
we don't need CEOs.
We need no CEOs. Need more female guillotine people. What are they, executioners?
Oh, we should get. Okay, you're an artist. This is something you should work on. You should make like a cute anime girl with a guilotine. And
like
just like fucking tag it everywhere.
Like Revolution Chan or something. Maybe, we'll see. Well, that might make it into a future video at some point. I'm not sure if I'm ready to I'm very wary about making like direct calls like that in videos because I kind of like I'm trying not to like, I don't want to be like, you know, like everyone should be like, you know, like an anarcho-syndicalist or anything like that.
Yeah,
you know, like I'm more like, okay, this is how these systems work, and these are some ways you can think about it, and then people can like, you know, check out other stuff and like, you know, there's like there's plenty of really good YouTube channels for like theory and more like kind of hardcore analyses, and I don't necessarily know if I want to go that deep into things. Like maybe in the future, maybe I'll do that. But at the moment, I'm kind of thinking more like I want to just kind of keep it to something that I guess the idea is like something you could show to someone that is like that maybe hasn't seen any other videos on the subject or hasn't read any kind of like leftist kind of stuff or whatever like that. Like, you know, whether it's like a friend or a little brother or something like that, you could show them this video and be like, hey, so this is like, this is class consciousness or something.
Right,
you know?
right. That's cool. That's really cool, because actually that sort of dovetails into this recent there's a debate that sort of popped up recently on the breadtube subreddit and a couple other places where people are talking about don't mistake watching breadtube videos for reading theory. I've been doing this over in my mind. I think I'm going to make a short video about it because I'm really interested, because I think a large swath of breadtube videos, including my own, and I think yours as well, they're sort of like bite-sized pieces of anti-capitalism and how the system works. They're actually not supposed to be a direct replacement.
Exactly.
And
I think there's space for everything, you know, like there's space for like one of my favorite YouTube channels, and I mention it all the time, is the Radical Reviewer.
Oh yeah, dude's awesome.
Like does these like really good readings of classical kind of like leftist books, and actually and more recent ones as well, you know, like, and doesn't just give like, you know, like a dry reading, like actually critiques them and kind of you know, like kind of like introduces other books, like, you know, like a really good one is the one on Kropotkin's Conquest of Bread, which is coincidentally where I got the name Conquest of Dread for my channel.
How did I not figure that out?
But
that's amazing.
It's really good because like he talks about it and he's like, okay, well, you know, like obviously technology has changed a lot in this time, so some of this stuff is more relevant, some of it is less relevant, and since then other people have written other books that have kind of filled these gaps, or, you know, like, and which is really good. And I think that kind of stuff is like for me personally, that's some of my favorite kind of content, you know. But I think that there's like, I've seen a lot of people in like some Discords and stuff complaining, saying that that the kind of more entertaining content is not good. Like we should be like more dry kind of like theory and like revolution and all that kind of stuff. But like I don't. Like I you know, there's like definitely a place for channels like that and guys like Black Red Guard and stuff like that. But I feel like we need to have everything, because like no one's just gonna go from just like some, you know, like no one's gonna go all the way to like Radical Reviewer or Black Red Guard from nothing. You're
just sitting there like, I'm just an average liberal, and then going into this, you know, review of like capitalist realism or something. Which is exactly. Video. But like, it's so good.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's the thing, right? Like, you know, I think Zero Books have a good channel as well that kind of like bridges a gap between their like the theory that they put out and, you know, that kind of stuff. But like for me, if I can like make a video that introduces people to the concepts like underpinning some of these things, then, you know, and even if I like, you know, like name drop some authors or something like that, like that's enough for them to go on and be like, you know, to investigate it or whatever like that. And like I'm always keen to kind of like share the work of other creators that I think kind of overlaps with what I'm doing.
Right.
Like a cool one that just came out. There's another New Zealander, a guy called Byron Clark, who he just put out a video like 2 days ago maybe, and it overlaps with my first video, the one about fascism and metal, and it's about, what is it? I can't remember what it's called, but it's
the far right in the Middle Ages, or the far right in the Middle Ages they made up. That's a great title.
and it's about how there's like this romanticization of this of like these kind of like it's like this Viking fantasy of the far right. This like this pure white ethno state Viking kind of thing, and it's like that's just not like reality. Like it's not grounded in reality, but these people fantasize as being like these historical nerds, and like they're all like, we're all about like, historical accuracy and all this kind of stuff like that. And it's like the same kind of thing that like, kicks off in movies and video games where people are like, like The Witcher 3 isn't like, they're like, it's got to be historically accurate and have no white people, have white people and stuff like that.
What history?
Exactly. It's
world.
Like, fucking like, okay, so I guess we got to cut out all the fucking griffins,
Shit, sorry.
I always find that like that kind of stuff. It is like like other like that game, Kingdom Come Deliverance was another one, like. But then like you never see people are always like complaining about like there's too many brown people in their medieval games. But then like if they really knew what was up, they'd be talking about like because like brown people did exist in those times. Like it wasn't like like they were definitely there. But the things like potatoes. Like they didn't have potatoes in Europe in those times. Like those came from South America somewhere or something like that. It's like, so like you have all these like potato farmers in the Middle Ages. And it's like,
and Skyrim and stuff.
Yeah. It's like there's more likely to be a brown person than a potato. It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, and it's like, and these are the people that call themselves like history buffs or whatever. Byron did a really good video that kind of like goes into this kind of stuff. And even he actually he put a little shout out to my video in there because they both kind of overlap. But it's really good. Like that kind of stuff I think is cool for like, like calling out the alt-right particularly on like a lot of these myths that they have or whatever, like it's like these appeals to tradition, but like the tradition isn't really there, like and that's I think Umberto Eco was talking about fascism, which is like it's the appeal to history that didn't really happen. It's the smoothing over of it all. That's like, the same thing that we're seeing with the more mainstream right in America at the moment, like the whole like Make America Great Again is this appeal to history and tradition. Yeah. But it's like, make America great for who? Like, are we talking about like, like the ethnic minorities who it was pretty terrible for? Are we talking about like, like South America who it was really, really bad for? Like it's like this like idea of a great America comes at the expense of everyone that isn't, part of the white majority or whatever.
And another interesting side of that is you also see the, very centrist liberals on the other side saying, this isn't who we are. Or this isn't what America is like. No, guys.
It's,
read a book.
That's another thing. I think it's like like I guess like the liberal thing is to focus mainly on the symptoms instead of the root cause.
And
it's
that's
like
exactly it.
They're just like it's like the same thing as like more female ice agents or whatever they want to say. Like it's like it's like it's ridiculous. It's like all of these issues coming up. They're just like it's just like the tip of the iceberg. It's there's underpinning problems that need to be addressed and systems that need to be it's ended.
Well, that's it. It's because these are people who by and large still benefit immensely from these systems, and to question these systems doesn't help them.
It starts making them feel uncomfortable when they start talking about like reparations and all this kind of stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's like whoa, don't get too crazy.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just looking at the screen now. We have hit minute 72 of recording. That is amazing. I have a hell of an editing job ahead of me because I don't even know what I'm going to cut. This has been so interesting.
Just anytime I said something stupid, just cut that.
And then now it'll be really awkward if I do cut it down to like 10 minutes. But Tim, mate, thank you so much for coming on. This was
thanks for having me.
So much fun. And so everyone at home listening or on the bus listening. Podcasts, they're a fascinating medium. Anyone listening, you can check out Tim's work. His YouTube channel is called Conquest of Dread. I'll put a link in the description below. Do you want to share your Twitter account or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I use Twitter. I don't really have like an official, Twitter for my YouTube account or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of use one that I started using just for like my kind of tattoo stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just Timothy Tattoos. And
so, in the month or so it took to finally get this episode released, Tim went ahead and changed his Twitter name. He can now be found at Dread Conquest. Back to the interview.
I do post YouTube stuff, but I also post, like pictures of my art and work and stuff like that. So you can check that out if you are that way inclined.
Come for the YouTube, stay for the ink.
yeah, the sick ink.
All right, man. Thank you again, and I'll catch you later.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Another big thanks to Tim for coming on. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can follow us on Twitter at GettingThatPod. You can also find links to all of Tim's videos there. If you'd like more of my work, it can be found on YouTube under the channel name Hardcore Lime. Getting That Bread's theme song is Look Outside by Stinky from the Not Responding EP, available on Spotify and SoundCloud. If you're into lo-fi hip-hop at all, check out the rest of his work. It's super cool. I shall be back in a few weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening.